listen to it again. So my name is Tu Nguyen from OMB. With me are Nelson, Mark, who is also from OMB, and then we also have today with us Keandra Silo Dodds from Equity. She'll be joining us for the second half of our training session to talk about the equity and the MBEAT surveys. So we'll get a lot more into that in the later half of the sessions. So we're going to begin with our slides here. Okay. So we'll first start talking about the agenda. So for today, we're going to start with talking about the key dates, the system key dates, the budget system requirements, the budget system instructions and flowchart, the next steps. We'll get into the system demo, and then Keandra will give us instructions on the equity process. For the system key dates, we're opening today. If you have not seen it already, we had sent out the budget bulletin just a short while ago to announce the budget system open. We are having the first of the 2 training sessions beginning today. The second one will be tomorrow at the same time. If you have any changes to your cost center access, either you have a new staff coming in or someone leaving, or someone's changing SLTs, then please go to the OMI website, download the cost center access form, and then submit it to us as soon as you can. On 210, the legal service request form is due to County Council. 219, the budget system closes. That's almost 3 weeks from today. 219 is also when each SLT is expected to review and sign off on their FY22 budget. 226 is part 1 of the MBEAT tool due in the system. And then March 5th is when the second part of the MBEAT survey due. So for the system requirements, as with the previous years, there is an add-in file that you need to download and configure your PC. That add-in file is very critical. It has all the macros that are required for your Excel to work with the upload templates. When you are going to log into the system, be sure to use either IE11 or Chrome browsers. Microsoft may or may not work, but it is not certified at this time. So while you may be able to use it, there are certain quirks or other functionalities that may not work, and we may not have any technical resolution for that. So if you have problems with Microsoft Edge, then I suggest going back to IE11 or Chrome. For expenses, the FY22 target for non-labor expense this year was set at a high level at the SLT and program type combination instead of subprogram as before. It is based on historical performance, cost curves, and constraint based on funding available. So because of the SLT program type is much higher level, it is going to provide you greater flexibility to help manage your budget. Non-labor targets have hard stop. That means the system is not going to allow the departments to submit your non-labor requests that exceed the target at the SLT program type level. And as before, justification is required for professional services, contract services, temporary employees, miscellaneous accounts, and overtime, and for any other new activities that you are requesting. If you have any target adjustments, make sure to contact your OMB analyst, and your target adjustment should be a net zero change to your SLT total. For FTEs, Existing FTE targets also have a hard stop. So this is flat from FY21 mid-year and VSIP reductions. So we have backed out the whole 179 FTEs that are coming from the VSIP program. So the system would not allow any submission or requests that exceed target at the SLT and union group level. Again, to refresh your memory, for those of you who may not remember what VSIP is, it's the Voluntary Separation Incentive Plan. And again, we have backed out 100% of those 179 positions. You are allowed to add back 50% of those VSIP positions by using the new FTE template. And for your new positions, you need to make sure you check the VSIP flag. And I'll show that to you in a little bit during the demo. So there are no new non-contract FTE requests allowed. Contract FTEs will be dependent on service assumptions. So we know the regional connector and Crenshaw are opening. So if you do have new contract FTEs, you may request using the new FTE template. All VSIP and new FTE requests require justification, and the CEO will be reviewing those requests separately in March. Project FTEs will continue to be available. So again, to reiterate the flowchart of the process, you should begin by generating and reviewing the reports that will be available, and I can show you a little bit when we do the demo. Then you should be using the expense or existing FTE templates to upload your requests, validate and submit your data. If your FTEs and expense requests are within the target limits, then you can go ahead and submit, run your reports, then do the equity surveys, and you're done. If they exceed the targets, then you need to go back, readjust your requests through the upload process, again, validate and continue this loop until you have stayed within your limit. New FTE and VSIP requests go through a different FTE template. Again, anytime you do your uploads or submittals, you should run your reports to confirm that your uploaded data matches your submitted data. So to recap, please fill out and submit the cost center access request form if there are any changes in your SLT. For any legal services required, send the form that you can find on the OMBI website to County Council. Make sure you configure your PC and verify system access. So even though you may not be ready today or tomorrow or even this week to upload your budget request, but please do configure your PCs, download the add-in files from the OMBI website, make sure that your PC is not going to have problems. We don't want you to wait until the last week and then find out you have issues, and then we won't be able to respond if IT services is required. Then be sure to upload and submit your data. Use the report portal to run your data to confirm. If you have any other information that you may need, we have a lot of reference information on our OMBI website. And then, as always, your OMBI analyst is a very good resource for any questions that you may have. For the next 3 weeks, they are not allowed to have any sleep or rest, so they are available 24 hours for you to contact them. Okay, any questions before we begin the demo?
Looks like no questions.
Okay, great. Okay, so again, to log in, you have to have your FIS login and password. If you don't have it, or if it has expired since you last logged in, make sure you create a heat ticket for IT to reset it for you. And the first thing we want to do is go into the BIS data entry user responsibility, open the data entry menu, annual budget development, and go into the annual budget portal. So this portal will be your main page to do all your budget activities. We have the FY22 reports, expense upload, template by SLT and program type. Then you can validate or submit your expense requests. For FTEs, we have FTE upload template by SLT and union for existing FTEs. We also validate and submit your existing FTE requests. We have a new template for the new FTE requests and VSIP requests. So remember, you're allowed to request back up to 50% of your VSIP FTEs, but they do have to be filled out using the new FTE template. Then for the equity portion, we have two parts. Part one, which is required for all new or expanded or reduced scope or activity. So if you have a project, and Keandra will go into it a lot more detail. So it's project driven, not necessarily by project code, but your activity. Part two is going to be required once for each SLT, and then these are always available. So first, I'm going to go into the expense upload template. And I'm just going to pick finance and budget and Metro Transit. So it's going to try to open up Excel template. And depending on which browser you use, you may see a slightly different page. On mine, it's trying to, it just asked me down here. I'm not sure you can see my cursor, but it says, what do you want to do with Web ADI? And I'm going to say open. So depending on which version of Excel you have, most of us should already be on 365, but it will still work if you have Excel Office 2010. Minimum, you should be on 2007. Wait for the pop-up to say close before you click on it. So here is my download of my Metro Transit program type for finance and budget. The header will give you some additional information. We are currently in FY22 requested budget name. We are using the replace template. You can also use the add for incremental change if you wish, but for most of the time, replace should work just fine. So the first thing you want to do is to initialize your template with a Control W. And basically what it does here is to make your data formatted a little bit nicer. You see it has comma delimited. Your subtotals are here for both annual and quarterly. So when you make a change, you will see it be reflected on the line and also on the total. So it gives you a visual cue of where you are based on your target. You can see my target is only $13. I'm already 12 million over it, but that's okay. It will still allow you to upload. You won't get an error until you try to submit. But we understand that you're still trying to upload, maybe adjust it, you're reviewing your data. So it will upload anything that you want to enter here. just so that it's saved in the database, so you can download and review it during this whole 3-week process. And as you can see, since I updated this row, over on for that row, I have this flag that tells me that I changed that row. So when I do go to add-ins and Oracle and upload, keep everything the same here and just click on upload. And it should come back and tell me I have one row updated. Okay, so I have a happy face here. The other thing you may want to do, if you only have a few adjustments, and remember this is the data is a default coming from your FY21 mid-year data. So all the flex fields here are coming from that budget. If you only have a few adjustments by changing the numbers, everything, all the flex fields the same cost center, project, task, account combination, and you only need to make the changes to your numbers, then that's what you just do. You just make changes to your data. And then upload. But if you want to start out fresh and just save your flex field information here, but zero out your data, you can do that also. I can zero out this and copy all this way down, zero it out. I'm going to go up here to Oracle and upload. This is assuming that I've already downloaded everything and I saved a copy so that I can work off that copy and make all my dollar adjustments there. So once it's here, and let's say I have a file that I've been working on, and it has all the information that I wanted to keep. And so now I just want to copy and paste over. So I'm going to highlight the rows that I want to copy, do a Control C to copy. And I'll go in here and I will Control V to paste. And you can see it's just a simple that copy and pasting. And because it knows that I just made a change to my data, it put in the flags for me here. I'm going to upload. And don't worry if you have duplicate rows, because I know I just copied from another file. There could be another row already that has cost center 3020 with 3016 project and 0101 task and professional services. The system will combine your duplicate rows into one because mine is a replace. And it'll just override what it was previously there. So now when I download it, see the close. So now my data's there. Okay, when you're done, when you download, it's your confirmation that the data was indeed saved to the database and you're able to download it and see your result. And I'm not going to save this. And I'm going to close that also. Sometimes after you open your template, this Web ADI blank screen may still be there. And depending on the browser, it may or may not allow you to open another template if this file already exists. So just make sure you close it. And there's no need to save it. So that's for expense. Then we're going to go, oops. We're going to go back to our main page and we'll work on the FTEs. So for FTEs, I'm just going to pick non-contract and work with that first. And again, I'm going to say open. And wait for the close. So very similar to the expense, FTEs, you have the same head information, your budget name, your SLT, which union code you chose to download, your target at the SLT and union level. And again, you have your cost center, project task, your job title here, and then your allocation. Remember that if you're making any changes, you can still, do zero out. So one thing to remember in all cases of these templates is if you decide not to have this EO of finance anymore, don't just delete it, right? So delete doesn't let the system know that that's what your intention is, because once you remove it, what you upload it back, it doesn't see that record anymore. So the next time you download, you still see it. The system only recognizes these upload flags. So if you wanted to not budget to a certain position or account, then you need to zero it out and then add a new row. For instance, if I just zeroed out the department system analyst for cost center 3020, and I want to move it to maybe another cost center. So I'm going to move it to 0511, but probably going to keep the same project. I'm just going to move that one position over to a different cost center. And then I'm just using Excel functionality to copy and pasting. So when we download, then you will see this row will disappear, and then this one will remain, the 0511 will remain. To upload. Okay, so you see it completed 2 of my records that it processed, but if I go back and download, you see now it, row 15, this is my new row. It went from 3020 to 0511. So that's how you would shift your positions from one cost center to another, or a similar thing. If you want to change project number, you need to zero out the existing project number. Don't change the project number on the same line, because all it's doing, it will create a new row with this combination, but you still have the old row combination. So in actuality, you'll be adding to it. So if you have any changes to the flex for information, just zero it out and then create a new combination. Okay, I hope that's clear. Oh, sorry. Another thing I want to add is if these are project FTEs, you will see that here, or if you're requesting a project FTE, you'll see it here. But this is for existing FTE, so I won't be showing that here. I will now open the new FTE template. Okay, go down to open. Okay, so I already have 3 requests for new FTEs. And I have 2 Ask Me and 1 TCU. What is new about this template is, in addition to all the other columns that you have from the existing template, we have a ranking, new or existing work, and VSIP. So here we are requesting all 3 new FTEs. None of them are coming from the VSIP 50%. So in your ranking, you need to specify in the order of importance of these FTE requests. And you should only have one number 1, one number 2, and one number 3. New existing work is it's either new or existing. So is this for existing activity that you're doing, or this is a brand new project or activity you're working on? Okay, and then VSIP again, if you are asking for VSIP back, then you should put in your VSIP flag, yes or no. Justification, it's required, so please do enter that. And then again, going to add in and upload. You notice that when I went into this template, I didn't do the Control W. The Control W is not necessary in order for me to upload. It's just a nice thing to have so that, you know, you can see since I didn't do the Control W, I don't have the subtotals here to tell me, but I can always do it anytime, and that will tell me. So that's just something, if you forget to do the Control W when you first come in, don't worry, you can always do it. And let's say if you had updated something, the Control W will wipe it out, right? Just this upload flag. And if that's the case, let's say you had made a change to here, and you do a Control W and it clears it out, just go back to that row, double click on it, that will bring back the flag, and then you can do the Oracle upload again. Okay, when you're done, you don't have to do the download, but I always like to do it so that it gives me a good confirmation that my data is there. Okay, so someone is also testing at the same time I'm testing, so we're getting more data here. Okay, that is it for the upload itself. We're going to go back into the portal, and we're going to validate and submit our request that we just uploaded. For expenses, we are validating and submitting by SLT and program type. So remember, that's how the targets were given. So if you think that all your program types are within your target, go ahead and validate. It will let you know whether, if any of your program types have exceeded. So here we're good. Okay, so actually, let me go find finance and budget, since that's what I worked on. Okay, so remember I uploaded or made changes to Metro Transit, over $1 million. I only had a target of $13, and you can see it's telling me that for this program type, I would not be able to submit because I've exceeded the target. So if I click on that button, it will give me of all the projects that are within that subprogram that make up the 1 million. So you can see here's my total 1 million. The target is only 13, and it's off on its own line because it's at the program type level, and there's no project number associated to it, so it's not in line with any of the detail level. So once you see your data, you know which projects you need to work on. You should go back to the upload process, adjust your project numbers accordingly, make sure that when you upload that your requested target is not going to exceed your target, and then coming back here and try again. Now, I know that here, I'm going to pick one, TID, for Transportation Infrastructure Development. I know I am within my target. I have $5 a target. My requested is 0. So I'm good. So I can go, and let's say I'm not done with all my program types, but I want to at least submit that one. So because I am within my target, I'll see this button that says Submit for Budgeting. What Submit does is it takes the data from your working tables, your staging tables, and move it into the bias system. And that will tell us that you are serious about your submission. Similar to expenses, on the FTE side, we have SLT and union group. So for FTEs, we do it by union because we want to make sure that you have whole numbers, right? And when you download the data, the template for your SLT and union, as you work on your budget requests, take a look at your numbers and make sure that they're whole numbers, right? We don't want any dangling, any fractions by union, because especially by cost center, if you don't want to submit a 0.999 for FTE, you want it to have a whole number. Okay, so for FTEs, I'm doing good. All my unions are within my target. 66 for TCU, non-contract is 163, ASME is 3. I'm solid. So I can submit and wait a few seconds for the system to process, and then you should get a confirmation that it's been done. Once you're done uploading, validating, submitting, then we'll go back and run some reports. Let me try to zoom into here so you see the data better. Oops, going the opposite. Interesting. Okay. All right, so I hope this is clear. As you can see, here is my expense data by SLT. As a default, it gives you the whole agency numbers, but I can go down here, look for my SLT. Okay, so just bear with me just for a few seconds for the data to load. Okay, so I'm squinting as I'm looking for finance and budget. Then the other filters here too that you can use, if you just want to see by transaction type meaning, whether it's user entered, that means you did the upload and you controlled it, or they can be calculated data as in once we close the system and we calculate labor, it will show up as labor and fringe, or we apply worker comp or POPD or overhead, you'll see those types of transactions too. So right now we are just concerned with the user enter type, which means it's the data that you're responsible for. So that's all I want to see. I want to know what I uploaded versus what was target, and then compared to mid-year data for 21. And then there are other things that I can, if you are concerned with a specific cost center, you can filter by cost center within that SLT. You can also filter by program type. Also, if you want to see a specific project. So these are all the filters that's available. These are all standard filters, part of the reporting tool. We also have the expense by program. If you want to take a look at the program, because that's how the upload is looking at. It's just a different pivot by program type instead of SLT and cost center. So again, you can filter for your SLT. We also have FTEs by SLT. So as you can see at the total, this is the numbers that we have by program. It may not make sense for you to look at these pivot views. So if it makes sense for you, use it. If not, then just go ahead and use by SLT. And then if you want to see the raw data, just doing a data dump of everything that was uploaded for your SLT or cost center or department, you can download the data. Once the data comes back up, okay. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with this Power BI tool, but they all work very similarly. You have this 3 ellipses here that says more options. If you click on that, you can export or download your data. So here it exports the data of whatever screen I'm seeing, and then just leave everything as a default. Click on the export button. It will, once it has finished processing the data, it'll tell me that it's going to open the Excel file. You can see up here is still processing. It's a lot of data, so be patient. And it says, what do you want to do with expense data? So of course we want to open it. Let's see, where did it go? Okay, so here is my data with all the filters that I selected. Since I didn't apply any filters except for the default filters, it's downloading for FY22 requested or the target. And so now I have full Excel functionality. I can pivot, I can, do all kinds of custom reports that I need to here in Excel. So once you download it, you can save it, work with Excel, and then do whatever reporting you need in order to submit to your management. Okay, I'm not going to save this. Okay, so then I think I Okay, so I'm steering. Okay, so hopefully it hasn't timed out my form yet. So the next thing I want to show is the MBEAT part 1, which is by activity. So again, to emphasize that you have until February 26th to complete these surveys. And this is one per new, changed, or reduced scope. So you may have more than one. And if you do have some, what you want to do is click here to go to the survey link. Okay, so I won't go through this because this is live data and I don't want to mess up Keandra's database. So I'm just gonna say that, you know, once you start doing the survey, by the time you get to the end of the survey and you submit, you'll get an MBEAT unique ID. So just copy and paste, you know, by Control C and Control V. Let's just say this is my ID. I'll go back to my form and I will, you know, add another row, bring up which project that you're working on, and then paste by Control V my ID that I just copied from the survey. And then select what type, the reason for why you're doing this. Is it because you have expanded scope? Is it a new activity or reduced scope? So just pick one of the three. If you have any comments that you want to maybe try to explain further to Keandra, you're welcome to enter the comments. Limit is 4,000 characters. Once you're done, we're going to save it. Okay, so once you're saved, you're done with part 1. There's a part 2, as you can see from the main page, or we created a shortcut here that you can go directly to the part 2 if you wish to. So part 2 is similar in that there is going to be a link to the survey. So again, click on the link. Link's not available yet, but once it is, you'll be able to go fill out the link, get the ID, enter it here, and then any comments you want to have. And remember, the part 2 is only by SLT and it's not by project. So we only need to know that, okay, you're in finance and budget. That's the survey you filled out. If you have any comments, enter it and then save it. Okay. And then I'm going to go back to my main page. And that is the extent of your budget request. So we're going to go back to our Okay, so before I turn it over to Keandra, are there any other questions that you have? Very good.
No questions at all. You must be very
Okay.
clear and precise.
Okay, great.
Oh, wait a minute. There is one question. Vito, unmute yourself, please, on the top, the menu bar, and go ahead and speak.
Hi, this is Arslanian. I was just wondering, didn't we submit these MBAT forms weeks ago? Are we having to re-enter them?
Keandra, would you like to take that?
Yeah, so the MBEAT was submitted for the mid-year process, and then it was submitted for the capital project. So this is for any new non-capital projects you'll have to do an MBEAT for. And then part 2 is for the entire department's budget. And that wasn't required previously, so this would be the first time that those will be required. Is this a good transition to the presentation?
Yes, I think it's perfect timing. So again, this is Keandra Dodds, and she's here to speak about the equity and why we need to do it.
All right. Can everyone see? You see the slides?
Before you start, Keandra, sorry to interrupt. I believe someone has their hand up.
Okay. I can't see hands, so just call it out for me.
Abital?
Hi, Keandra. Yeah, I think this question is for Tam, more on a operationalized level. This MBEAT number for the survey and where we get it, and then like how do we know to enter it for which project? I'm unclear because OEI hasn't done any of these MBEAT surveys in the past, so this is the first time we're doing it. So I'm just unclear on how those two pieces fit together and like where I get the number and the operation order of those things. I'm unclear on.
Okay. That's part of what I'll walk through, but I don't know if you guys want to chime in before I do.
Yeah, just one thing. We weren't able to show the actual survey, so Keandra can go into more details. But when you do the actual survey and you hit the submit, it will then give you that ID. So once you have that ID, then you copy it and then come back into our forms and enter it there.
I'll do a little demonstration. I'll just do a test entry so you can see it, and then I'll go back and delete it.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. I guess I'll go ahead and begin. So I'm going to talk about the MBEAT, which stands for Metro Budget Equity Assessment Tool. Okay, quick background. Here's Metro's abridged definition of equity. Equity is both an outcome and a process to address disparities, to ensure fair and just access to opportunities. Essentially, it means that Metro's service delivery, project delivery, policy making, and distribution of resources account for the different histories, challenges, and needs of our community across Los Angeles County. It is what we're striving towards. So we were charged with creating a budget equity assessment by our board. So what is a budget equity assessment? Essentially, it applies an equity lens and helps us consider the needs, disparities, and assess potential benefit and harm to the communities that we're impacting, especially those with the greatest need and those facing the greatest disparities. The goal is really to maximize benefits and cause no harm to those communities as we strive to help everyone. There's a range of levels of review when it comes to equity assessments, including an agency level review, department level review, and a budgetary request level review. For Metro's budget equity assessment tool, the MBEAT, we decided to use a tool that provides both a departmental review and also a budgetary request level review. And just for clarification, when I say departmental, I'm referring to your SLT. So we're going to work on determining what's needed and a plan for our agency level review over the next year, and that's a separate process. But for the MBEAT, we will apply it to the department level and budgetary requests. All right, so the MBEAT. The MBEAT is a set of questions to guide Metro staff in considering racial and social equity explicitly in their budgetary decisions. There are two parts, as has been mentioned. The first part is applicable to all budgetary adjustments. That is any new expanded scope or reduced scope budget requests. And this is based on the activity, not based on the project code. So you might be reusing a project code, but it's a new activity, so you should submit an MBEAT. This also excludes requests for ongoing approved budgets or budgetary adjustments, like a standardized increase, such as a cost of living adjustment, or something that's already been approved within the life of project. So it's only for new expanded scope and reduced scope requests. Part 2, which I'll also talk about, should be applied to each of your department's overall budgets. And again, that's based on your SLT. Now, you'll notice I'm about to dive into some of the questions. And for any of you who are familiar with the rapid equity assessment, you'll notice some similarities. So let's dive in. All right. So for the MB budgetary adjustment, this is the part 1. There are 5 questions. The first question is, which areas, neighborhoods, or employees will the budgetary adjustment or the subject of the budgetary adjustment impact? And for areas or neighborhoods, are they equity-focused communities? Now, you may have items that have an internal impact related to staffing or administrative costs related to employees, or you may have a budgetary request that has external impacts that have impacts on our customers or contractors or other stakeholders. And so this asks you to identify who's the impact on, and if it's geographic or not. And if it's geographic, on the online tool, you'll see there's actually a map. And so you can draw around the area or create a line if it's, let's see, a bus route or a line or something like that. And then the map also shows you our equity-focused communities. This is how we define high-need communities. This is a definition that was passed by Metro's board. It's based on race, income, and lack of car ownership. The key thing you need to know is that the map itself is on the tool, so you'll be able to identify if your project area overlaps with EFCs. The second question is, does your budgetary adjustment directly benefit or potentially cause harm or negative impact to one or more of the following groups? And the groups that are listed include Black, Indigenous, or people of color, communities with low incomes, people with disabilities, people with limited English proficiency, minority or women-owned business enterprises, or disadvantaged business enterprises. And there's also an other category. And the other category encourages you to consider other groups that might be uniquely impacted by your request. That might include older adults, members of the LGBT community, women, or other groups. The important thing is that you consider the unique needs and who might have difficulty accessing the service or the program or the project. There may be cost barriers, physical access, safety, language access, or some other barrier. And it's important when answering these questions, especially this one, that you introduce any acronyms you use and provide enough information to allow the reader to effectively consider the budgetary requests. Also, when considering potential negative impacts or harms, you can note that they may be unintended or they may have impact some more than others, but it's just important to note them. Now, questions 3 and 4 actually build off of 2. So question 3 is, what considerations were taken into account to maximize equity in this request? So, and it asks you to be specific. So you might consider, any identified racial or social disparities in data. You might consider inequitable service levels that were identified, or concerns that you've heard from a particular community, or a solution that, this might be a solution that will provide, that will address a need that you've heard from a particular community. It might also help you engage, do some community engagement with particular communities. This information may be anecdotal or incomplete. This is the first time we're having to ask these questions and answer these questions. And so I recognize that there are some gaps in our data. There are some, there's a learning curve with this, but the important thing is to do the best you can and really focus on what is the impact to the community surrounding the project, impacted by the project, using the project, and try and be as specific as you can. The fourth question is, what steps will you take to mitigate any potential harm or negative impact caused by this request? Now, potential mitigation steps, they range, but options include starting with simply identifying the equity challenge, also reprioritizing within the project as requested to address the equity challenge, whatever it may be, promoting an equity connection. This is something that includes, maybe you can't address the issue in this particular request, but there's another project where you addressed it. So just noting that. And then it also may include addressing the concerns or providing mitigations directly. So it might be just kind of an easier fix. Now, the key here is, again, just providing specific strategies and examples of what you are considering for the project. And then the last question is, how will you monitor impacts to the affected population or evaluate outcomes over time? Again, I'm asking for specificity here, and the way you monitor might include qualitative metrics, including surveys or focus groups, or quantitative metrics, including the number of program participants, the number of writers, etc. The key thing is, if you're looking at what are disparities when it comes to the impacts, that whatever data you have, it's important that you try and make sure you get disaggregated data so that it's disaggregated by either race, income, language access, or whatever the demographics are that are relevant to the project that you need to monitor for. And then a few more just tips when it comes to answering these questions. Again, answer the questions as they relate to your specific request, what it will do and how it will be done. Consider what you know about the impacted community members. For example, if it's the impacts on our bus riders, we have survey data that helps tell us demographics about who rides our system. If it's about our bus operators, we have demographics about our employees that can help us understand impact. If it's a freeway project, we can look at census data to learn more about the demographics of the people in the area. And then we have plenty of other data to help us understand who takes the freeway and how people travel around in that area. Data is key. Part 1, for those of you who submitted a mid-year budget request, was applied to the mid-year budget. It was also applied to our capital projects. And I wanted to walk you through just a brief example to give you a sense, for those who are not familiar, of what it's like to some of the answers as you think about a project. So one project that I wanted to highlight is a new project. It's actually going to be a pilot, and it's being created under the customer experience plan. It's called our Rescue Ride program. And so under the customer experience plan, our marketing and OEI departments are working with customer care to implement a short-term pilot that quickly identifies customers impacted by a missed run or a pass-up in real time. And then it offers them in real time a free ride code for an on-demand shared ride service. Essentially, the goal is to help customers get to where they're going and show that Metro cares. And so in considering that pilot and answering these questions, I want to highlight just some of the things that we talked about. So for question 1, this pilot project would definitely have an external impact. And while the areas haven't been determined because it's still in development, it could and should prioritize equity-focused communities, as folks with limited transit options may be more harmed if they miss a run or have a canceled trip. So there's the ability to provide a greater benefit if we prioritize those areas. For question 2, we know that our bus riders are primarily low-income, Black and Latino. Accordingly, this would provide benefit to them, especially if they don't have other transportation options. And similarly, it could provide a benefit to people with disabilities if we have either ADA accessible vehicles or partner with Access Services or another paratransit service. This could also benefit our many Spanish-speaking customers, as well as other non-English-speaking customers, if the method of providing the free ride and communication about the program is provided in other languages. So that's an important thing to consider as far as access. For question number 3, we said this pilot is still under development, but it could maximize equity by considering things like lines with high pass-ups or cancellation rates, especially in equity-focused communities, considering the primary languages spoken in those areas and providing materials in those languages, and considering the need and options for providing accessible rides for people with disabilities in those areas. Similarly, for question 4, when talking about potential harms and how to mitigate them, we could mitigate any potential harm by really focusing on need, again, providing language access and providing accessibility options. And then lastly, for question 5, again, the details are still being determined, but the the program leads will consider many options, including tracking program participation, conducting surveys of participants, and potentially interviewing users to really learn about their experience using the program, the consequences of delayed trip born from a canceled trip or a pass-up, and what choices the riders had available to them when they experienced those situations. So this is the type of information that will help them figure out how to improve the program and figure out how to scale it ultimately. Now, the customer experience plan had considered many of the things that we talked about as far as equity challenges and benefits. However, the use of the tool provided a chance to reiterate some of those issues for them and to consider options in addressing them. And so I just wanted to share just some feedback that I got from the program lead on that, our Executive Officer of Customer Experience, Aaron Weinstein. And so he said the MB process was fast and easy to complete and helped reinforce the importance of being inclusive as we developed the Rescue Rides program. We talked about meeting the needs of people with disabilities and people who speak languages other than English and riders without smartphones, and explored possible ways to address the needs. Then I also wanted to talk about one other example. And so I worked with the Safety, Security, and Law Enforcement Department, and we applied the tool to several of their requests during the mid-year budget process, including a request for a new force simulator. Now, the simulator basically helps staff to put them in situations where they can learn how to de-escalate situations. And so through this process, we talked about the benefits of the training, but also the importance of really tracking successes and how to make adjustments as necessary. And so here's another just quick note from someone who went through that process, their chief administrative analyst, Imelda Hernandez. She says the MB has quickly proven its value in enhancing SSLE projects. Applying the MB for Transit Security's Pro Force Simulator, a training tool for officers, has highlighted the importance of seeking community engagement to ensure the simulator includes the type of training that would help all our riders feel safe when in the presence of our uniformed personnel. So the MB, we've tested it on a variety of different types of projects, and I know you all may have questions about your specific projects. So I'll talk more about the opportunities to get assistance as we go through this process. But I want to briefly now jump over into the part 2, which is our MB for the department / the SLT budget. Now remember, this should be applied to your whole budget, your whole department's budget. And when I say department, I mean your SLT's department, not your unit or your home office, which may be under an SLT. Now, some departments are quite large, and so upon request, some will be allowed to submit more than one for the department, but definitely make sure you contact me if you have questions about that. Now, onto the questions. The first question asks, how will the proposed budget build the department's capacity to engage with and include communities of color, low-income communities, and others most impacted by inequities? Now here, you should specify how much funding is allocated to support specific activities, including, but not limited to, community engagement, so meetings, events, surveys, committees, or any focus groups, but also live speech captioning or oral translation at meetings and on webinars, the translation of written documents, and anything where you're working to provide public documents, policies, and plans to make them more readily accessible to the public. So that might include any design costs, any cost to share them as well. The second question, how will your overall budget for the next fiscal year be realigned in targeted ways to advance equity and support a diverse and inclusive workforce? So this is kind of two parts. This may include shifts related to programmatic commitments that are intended to reduce or eliminate disparities. It may also include staff time allocations for the purposes of advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion, including but not limited to internal or external trainings, conferences, book clubs, etc. There's a variety of events we have internally, but there's also plenty of external opportunities for this. The key here is specifying what funding or staff time is allocated for these activities. The third question is, are there recurring funding gaps or limitations in your overall budget that could inhibit your department's ability to advance racial or social equity? we recognize that sometimes there might be things like funding limitations that are beyond your control, staff capacity, time constraints, or, you know, there's also recognition of the fact that racial and socioeconomic disparities are vast and deep. And quite frankly, there are many factors that influence them that are beyond Metro's control. And it's okay and important to acknowledge that. And so the last question is, does your department have, collect, or track the disaggregated demographic data your department needs to evaluate equity impacts in the community moving forward and to inform your future budgetary decisions? If so, give examples. And if not, what data is needed to help evaluate equity impacts and how you will obtain that? We're working hard to really figure out what data we have and what we need when it comes to measuring impacts related to equity. And so this question really starts to address that at a department level. Now, those are the 4 questions. Again, this wasn't applied during the mid-year process, so this will be the first time that we go through this tool. Now, a few things to remember before I wrap up, and I'm gonna also show you the online tool. Again, the MB, there's 2 parts, the one for budgetary adjustments, and again, apply it if your request is for a new, expanded, or reduced scope project, program, or activity. Answer the questions as they relate to your specific request, not your overall program. And then minimize the use of acronyms and assume the reader's unfamiliar. I just want to reiterate that. I notice we love to use a lot of acronyms, especially during the mid-year and the capital projects process. And then once complete, copy the confirmation code that's produced and included in your budget tool submission. Again, the deadline is February 26th for the budgetary adjustment. For the department or SLT budget, it's March 5th. So you have a little more time, recognizing that this is a new process, but I encourage you to consider these questions as you develop your budget and submit it earlier. The earlier, the better. There will be a lot of people submitting, and I'll have some office hours, which I'll talk about in a second. So for assistance, it's important that you contact your equity liaison. Hopefully all of you are familiar with the equity liaisons, but we meet regularly and they've been trained on this tool and others. And so they have a lot of good experience in applying an equity lens to decisions and thinking about the benefits and burdens for marginalized communities. So they're a great resource, and each of your departments has 1, if not 2. And then I'll also have limited office hours where I'll be available and can meet with you and walk through different examples. I am but one person, so I'm recommending that you start with your equity liaisons, and then if you still need additional help, I have provided them all with the office hour times, and I'm actually going to add some, and so you can connect to them, and then they'll schedule some time. And then let's see, the last thing I wanted to show you this. These are the equity liaisons. And in the tool, which I'm about to show, you can also find out who's your equity liaison. So, all right, you can either use your phone and scan this QR code, or I'm going to take you there. And I'm going to stop sharing my PowerPoint so I can show you the, okay, how do I, the transition is not always smooth. Okay. There we go. So now I'm going to transition to my web browser so you can see a sample. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, so this is the MB for the budgetary adjustment, or part 1. When you click, you can read the background text, its definitions, and a little bit about how to complete it, just a reminder. Here are the questions, and so you have to complete each one to be able to go to the next page. You pick your fiscal year. You go and as you pick your department, you'll see that there are names. Those are your equity liaisons. And so I'm in the Office of CEO, so I'll go here. Then you can put your unit, office, or program lead here. You put who, I'm just gonna make up something. Then here you note the name of the person who completed the form. And then who is the project contact? That may be the same person. I recognize that sometimes it's not. And then is this a board-directed program or project? Yes or no? What's project name? Project scope? A lot of this you can copy from what you've already submitted. Just remember, introduce acronyms. Your fiscal year budget requests, your life of project budget, your project number, cost center number, and account number. And you click next. And now these are the 5 questions that I went through. I won't go over the questions again, but I'll just show you. Here's the map. You can either do a shape or a free form, and then you just click it. You can zoom in if you need to, if you want to see, you know, the streets or something, and then you just circle the area. That's it. And then here are the groups that are listed under question 2, and it's broken up into benefit. So here are the benefit questions, and if you click one, then down here you explain how it impacts that group. And then if you, these are the harm, so it's broken up again, benefit, harm. And then if there's no specific or disproportionate harm or benefit, there's also an option to click that. 3rd question here, 4th, 5th. And then once you're ready and you're done, you click submit. And this important information, this is where your unique ID is created. So here's the MB Part 1 unique ID for your submission. It's kind of long. We'll work on getting it shorter, but you copy this and then you put this into the code. So please copy and save this code into your budget tool submission. So you'll get it once you've submitted. And the same thing will happen for Part 2. And with that, I will stop and see if there are questions. I see, let's see, a hand up. Elizabeth.
Hi.
Hello.
Do we get email confirmation once the MB has been submitted?
So unfortunately, no. I think in our next version of this, I'll work with IT to figure out how that gets submitted. I also will work with them because there is a way that you can still access this once you've submitted through your ArcGIS account. So if you have an ArcGIS account, then you can easily go through. But I need to get more information on how to set that up. But at this point, we don't have it sending an email confirmation.
Thank you.
No problem. Let's see, BG, that is...
Hey, Keandra, it's Brian Gales.
Brian, okay. Hi.
Hi, I'm in the communications department. We have 6 different call centers in our communications department. Will we need to submit an MB for each department?
So the departmental, so it's again by your SLT, not your departments within. So your whole SLT is communications, so you would send one. We can talk about whether it is too big to submit one, but we can, if you email me, we can have a conversation with your SLTs, Joni and Anthony, about that. But it's meant for every SLT as a whole.
Okay, yeah, I think that's definitely a conversation that we'll need to have because they do such varied activities, between marketing, public relations. So yeah, so we'll do that. Okay, thanks so much.
Again, we can definitely talk about it. There's, again, different levels of review. We do want to do, eventually we're going to have a whole agency-wide review, and that'll be very complicated. But we're trying to, look at the individual budget requests and then at that department level. But send me an email and we can follow up.
Got it. Okay, thanks much.
Thank you. All right, Avital?
Yeah, thanks, Keandra. I just wanted to get clarification in terms of where is the trigger to do a MBEAT form. Is it like if there's a delta in the budget per project, i.e. it goes up or down right from the last year? Does that trigger? Or I think I'm in the chat and there's a thought of if it doesn't affect the scope or activity, but what is the delta or the trigger that says then you need to submit an MBEAT form?
So it's not based off of how it impacts the budget per se, because it's if it's a new activity. So if you are using a similar amount, let's say it was $5 million and you got rid of, you completed one project, so the 5 million is gone, but then you have a new project that's 5 million. It's a new project. So it doesn't matter that it was the exact same amount. It's if you replaced it with the same project, that'd be one thing. And I guess the project would just be continued. But if it's a new activity, a new project or a new program, that's the trigger. And then expanded scope is if it's not if it's just a regular kind of life of project, a regular increase within the life of project, but if it's like a major scope change or something that's an expanded scope. Does that help?
So it needs to be something that we didn't do last year.
Or expanded scope of something that you did. If you have specific, it's always easier with specific examples. It's hard to kind of think about, but we can, there's a lot of hands, so maybe we could talk offline if you have specific examples. Okay.
So for example, a new task to a project, would that be MB? Would that require an MB?
What is, I mean, I need more detail.
Okay.
So for example, if I have a project where I have a book club and, you know, I purchase the books for the book club members. If it's just our book club budget, if it's a new project, it's a new book club project. So then yes, I will have to do that. But then in future years, if I'm just, you know, reapproving the same amount, there's no scope change. So that doesn't require an MB submission. Does that make sense? Does that help? I can't hear you if you're talking. All right, let's see the other hands. I'm sorry, please correct me if I get your name wrong, but Moralidar?
I got that, Keandra. You can call me Mao. My question is, I heard you say MBEAT is only for non-capital. Did I hear that correct? Non-capital projects?
No, so the MBEAT was applied to capital project requests during the capital project request period in November.
Right.
And so if you have new capital requests, then yes.
Okay. Second question I have is, say the window died I was doing and I got the final MBEAT ID and I forgot to put it back in FIS. Would I have to redo it, or is there any way to pull my MBEAT ID by searching for it?
So this is the question that I was getting to earlier. There is a way through the ArcGIS system, because this is an ArcGIS based survey. And let me get back to you on that. It's the question that I need to figure out with IT, but it's definitely possible. The settings are such that you're able to. The question is, if you don't have an ArcGIS account, or if you do, how do you access it? And if you don't, how do you get a copy of it? But if you complete it while logged in, you definitely will be able to re-access it. It's saved in the system, and you're even allowed to, you can go back and edit. But let me get back to you on that. And I can actually, I know that's going to be a question for multiple people. So I can, once I get a response from ITL, I'll send out that information.
And there is no harm in case, you know, somebody lost their MBEAT, they redo the survey.
You can redo it. It's just more. I'll notice there's a copy.
Okay. Well, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Keandra, there's a question in the chat. She asked, do we need to submit MBEATs for formula-driven subsidy budgets allocated to LA County operators?
That is a good question. And so it's just, I haven't had this question yet. And as you can imagine, this is a new program, so lots of questions come up. You stumped me, but
I would assume not, because the formula is,
yeah, the scope is not changing. It's just you're making the formula, and there's also no flexibility within the formula because it's the formula. So yeah, my instinct is not. But can you? Is it Minajay?
Yes. Hi,
Can you-
Kendra.
Hi. Can you email me that question? And I want to ask you a few more questions, but my instinct is no, based off of what I know about the way things are allocated.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are board approved policy and allocation methodology. So we are allocating budget to other municipal operators based on that approved formula. But yeah, I send you an email. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. That's a great example.
Thanks.
And also, I do want to note that, you know, with this first implementation of the full MBEAT on our full budget, we're going to learn things and, you know, make adjustments as we go to improve the process. So I appreciate the questions. This will only help us improve. All right. Was there any other question? Awesome. Well, don't hesitate to reach out to your equity liaisons. And if you know you need additional assistance, I'm here. I'm trying to keep the questions separate, so I have an equity and race at metro.net email that you can email, and that way I can keep those questions kind of prioritized and keep them in order. Make sure I get back to you within you know, as quickly as possible given our deadlines, although you do have more time to complete the MBEAT, but don't wait till the last minute. All right, well, seeing no more questions, I think I'm done.
Great.
Thank you, Kiandra. Okay, again, that this session is recorded, so anyone attended this session can go back to this link and review with the recording.
Thank you.